Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here together this Sunday night in July. There are a lot of things to talk about. A lot of things we'll talk about at the break. But right now there's news. Are you signed up to receive our weekly rundown of topics? The once a week email that's sent out to everybody. Well, this week I sent 2. It's because I'm old. I sent the first one and didn't put the attachment to it. If you'd like to get the email, just email me to at thebibleforum@gmail.com with your request, and I'll do that. Once a week, Saturday, no other emails. Don't bother people with stuff. We have a number of things in what I'm calling tonight the religious news. The Pope was in Saudi Arabia recently, just in the last week or so. And while he was there, he said, quote, "The time has come to eliminate inequalities, to heal the injustice that is undermining the health of the entire human family." Pope Francis further commented, "Let us welcome this time of trial as an opportunity to prepare for our collective future. Because without an all-embracing vision, there will be no future for anyone." The Pope also decided the possibility of a selfish indifference replacing the COVID-19 when it's finally banned or tamed or destroyed. The ideology behind these comments is directly in line with the Pope's background as an archbishop in Latin America. Terms like inequality, injustice, and collective future all expose the thinly disguised veneer over his basic Marxism. Marxism that has been incorporated into Catholicism under the name of liberation theology. The most graphic examples of these results of this liberation is the complete destruction of Venezuela's prosperity, as well as Cuba's lost generation to spiritual bondage. As we march forward toward the era of the Antichrist, it is increasingly evident that Marxism will be the political dimension of the one world government. It neatly incorporates some of Satan's basic lies. Foundation to all of this is atheistic evolution, which declares there's no need for God because man is mutating continually, always upward to a higher level of perfection, and he only needs the right environment in order to thrive. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops have joined together to consecrate their nations to the care of Mary. They did this on May 1st, and to ask that she intercede to Jesus during the COVID pandemic. Of course, the bishops were only following in the footsteps of the Pope, who early on in the pandemic prayed at the shrine for Mary to twist Jesus' arm to stop the virus. What is significant about May 1st? Well, the answer is that it's May Day. May Day celebrations date back to pagan Celts of the British Isles. The Festival of Beltane, a date thought to divide the year in half, the light and the dark. When Rome conquered the British Isles, the Roman ritual of Floralia was instituted at about the same time of year, April 20th to May 2nd. Eventually the two were combined and have been known as Beltane ever since. The maypole is thought to be a fertility symbol, and people dancing around it in order to encourage the birth of children. It's interesting to note that the early Puritans outlawed the maypole in New England. Now, May Day is identified with workers' rights. The Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, later the AFL, proclaimed 8 hours shall constitute a legal day's labor, that beginning on May 1st, 1886. The Pope, arguably the most important, humanly, so-called Christian leader, making nice with Catholicism's arch enemies, Arab Islamism, is a biblically significant event. It was Islam that sacked both Rome, 846 AD, and Constantinople in 1204 AD, both of which were seats of ancient Roman power, both secular and religious. These two enemies have nothing in common, except they are both human. So what is the Pope trying to do here? Is he just trying to make nice because that's who he is? Does he want to join forces with these people to spread Catholicism? Or does he want to join hands against their corporate foe, biblical Christianity? If you've read the Bible for any length of time, been in any kind of a church that teaches the Word of God, when I say to you the mark of the beast, you know what that means. The Michigan House of Representatives has passed a bill to microchip humans voluntarily in their state under the guise of protecting their privacy. It's called the Microchip Protection Act. This act would allow Michigan employers to use microchipping of their workers, with the workers' consent, obviously. No consent? Well, you probably won't be working there. That won't be the first thing that happens, but over time, that's where it's going. Keep in mind, research has shown that these RFID transponders, which is what it is they're implanting, causes cancer. The stated objective of the bill is that it will protect the privacy rights of Michigan workers and promote further growth for job providers as it relates to microchipping. The chips, roughly the size of a grain of rice, are implanted into the hands of employees and act as a replacement for ID badges, time cards, usernames, passwords, all this security clearance stuff, and even for credit cards. Now, how, you ask, did the Bible know that all this would happen? Revelation chapter 13, written over 2,000 years ago. The Apostle John says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he had that mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Under Gale's plan, Michigan employers would be able to utilize microchipping, but could not mandate employees to have such devices implanted. However, research has suggested that 90% of Americans are uncomfortable with microchipping, mostly due to studies that suggest a link between RFID transponders and cancer in lab animals. In May, the plan to chip humans globally through a digital ID was exposed in the Italian Parliament. Globally, it's Bill Gates who's pushing this technology, although he denies doing so in order to implant chips in people. There is a chip agenda in India and Africa, along with plans to chip the human race through the digital identification program known as ID 2020. Oh, and news outlets have reported groups who do research accessing your cell phone signal. Apparently, people are quite happy to open that up to the world in order to feel more safe. Should you have an accident or be confronted by a crook, they want certain people to always know where they are. My wife has one of those gadgets she takes with her, just in case, and her phone. None of us leave home without the phone anymore. And when we do, we feel vulnerable. Does anybody remember 1955? As children, we played out of doors, in the woods, in the swimming hole. We did that all day. No one knew where we were, nor did they ask. We would arrive home for supper, and as long as you were on time, that was all that was necessary, that and wash your hands. And the only time we got in trouble was when we were supposed to be home earlier and we forgot. This week, an evangelical Lutheran pastor spoke out. It's the first time I've read anything like this. His name is Tom Brock. He's an evangelical Lutheran pastor. And he writes, I've spent many years as a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. That is, until I led my congregation out for a more biblical branch of Lutheranism. Liberal, he says, is no longer the word for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. It has become radical. Here's what I mean. The ELCA pays abortion costs for any reason in the denomination's health care plan, which is funded by offering dollars. Dollars you put in the offering plate can go to kill unborn children. The ELCA ordains practicing homosexuals and now also transgender pastors. 2 summers ago, 31,000 ELCA teenagers attended the ELCA's youth gathering. Popular ELCA pastor Nadia Bowles-Weber led the students to say after her, quote, I renounce the lie that queerness is anything other than beauty, end of quote. At that youth gathering, an 11-year-old boy who thinks he's a girl was put on stage to promote transgenderism. This past summer, she says, which would have been 2019, the ELCA in convention passed an interfaith resolution stating that we do not know what God thinks of non-Christian religions. A delegate got to the microphone to offer an amendment saying that we do know, because John 14:6 says that Jesus is the only way to salvation. His amendment was voted down by 97%. A Chicago newspaper asked ELCA head Bishop Elizabeth Eaton if hell exists. Her response was, it may, but I think it's empty. Recently, the Christian Post reported on ELCA's promoting a prayer to Mother God. If you go to herchurch.org, you'll find an ELCA congregation in California that worships, quote, our mother who is within us, end of quote. The church's pastor led the women on a retreat in which he gave each a lump of clay to fashion their own Asheroth goddess statue so they could worship the forbidden divine feminine. My alma mater, the ELCA's Lutheran Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota, held a commemoration service for the Transgender Day Remembrance in which a transgender preacher led the students in the Lord's Prayer, saying, Our Mother in Heaven. He says, I'm on a Facebook page that includes pastors of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, some of whom believe it is sexist to pray exclusively to God as Father. I responded that Jesus taught us to pray our Father, and we are in no position to correct him. A music minister at an ELCA church in Virginia didn't like my comment and responded, quote, "The Lord's Prayer is a pattern for prayer. Do you still say it in Arabic, Hebrew? Then shut up. I'll call God Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, anything I want. Doesn't change my salvation." Did you notice what's going on in the comment? Lutherans believe we are saved by grace alone and not by our good works, which is gloriously true, Ephesians 2:8 and 9. But some Lutherans practice grace abuse and say because I'm saved by grace, I can live like the devil and do whatever I want. Or as the Apostle Paul put it, shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. Two strongest words in all of the Bible. Romans chapter 6:1. We are saved by grace alone. But grace is never alone. It always changes our lives. Good works do not save us, but they are the evidence that we actually have been saved. So no, we're not free to worship God as mother, sister, brother, anything we want. The grace of Christ moves us to want to obey God, not to treat him with contempt and remold him into anything I want. Sadly, the ELCA has become the denomination of anything I want. Martin Luther believed that the Bible alone is the highest authority for the church, and he would be grieved if he could see what the ELCA has become. In fact, some of us think ELCA really stands for everything Luther cautioned against. We'll be right back. We're going to look at some political and cultural issues next. Stay tuned.